Welcome to Intersect, a podcast where we find connection in each other's story. Today I'm with my friend David Barto, who I've gotten to know here in the Ottawa Collegedale area through two sons who've worked with him on groundskeeping and miscellaneous other projects related to the Tomorrow Foundation, etc., etc., etc. Today we are sitting in David's dining room, surrounded by a kind of grayish, bluish, well, it's just a period home that takes me back to Teddy Roosevelt in the national parks with mugs hanging on the wall, nice little, some kind of lacquered wood plank, mugs from national parks all around the country. But David, you have quite an interest in the parks and community engagement development. Tell us what led to all of this in your experience.
Honestly, I'm not sure how it all started. The Collegedale Tomorrow Foundation, which was what built the Commons, what led Collegedale to adopting the standards, architectural and landscaping and sign standards, other things, just really developed from my travels across the country. And we would be in these cute little towns out west, and you would see a Walmart that was absolutely beautiful. And I just got curious. So the next time we would be through, say, Loveland, Colorado, I just pulled into their courthouse and walked in and found their planning office. And I just asked, what on earth did you people do? How did you get Walmart to not build a cinder block Hulk with no landscaping, ugly sign, all that? And they just looked at me and said, well, we told them to do it.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, I didn't know you could tell them to do it.
Okay.
And so that's how Collegedale Tomorrow really got started. And then the Commons developed from an idea that the East Tennessee Symphony Orchestra wanted a place to perform at. Mm-hmm. A group that I represented, for lack of a better word, wanted farmers markets. Mm-hmm. The veterans groups and the Kiwanis wanted their own places to meet. We knew we needed a place for the community to come together and get to know each other again. We've all got these wonderful little devices that we pay $1,000 a pop for that are supposed to connect us. And the reality is we've probably never been more divided in this country. So we need places where people can just come together, mingle, meet, just meet up and communicate.
So just to summarize so far, then apparently something in your backstory, there was some value of aesthetic. So you're driving cross country, you see a Walmart that doesn't look like just a set of, pile of bricks with a tin roof on top, and that's attractive to you. And then as you're listening to the people in the community, you're hearing certain needs and trying to get ourselves past the pocket god that sits in our blue jeans every day, and to actually have kind of old town connection. And so between aesthetic and human connection, there's something that started to kind of take shape in what here in Collegedale, Ottawa area we call the Commons, and that started to take on a life of its own to a certain degree based upon listening to the needs of the community.
Yes. I mean, we've provided a place for people to have farmers markets, corporate meetings, parties, weddings, concerts. We provide a place for 3 different veterans groups, the Kiwanis, the Chamber, to meet weekly or monthly. And all those they create a sense of community and purpose. I mean, when you've got Democrats and Republicans or Adventists and non-Adventists, everybody coming together, well, all of a sudden you discover that no one's as bad as you thought they were on Facebook.
Okay. Yeah, which is interesting.
I sort of look at the Commons as the anti-Facebook.
Okay. So building your community in kind of very tactile, tangible ways that pre-exist the digital virtual age can kind of foster connectivity, break down barriers of criticism, judgment, whatever we want to call it.
Yes. I mean, look at the old towns from the 1600s and up in New England. They had the commons.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the whole town was centered around a big green space, and that's where they would do like a big Thanksgiving dinner and various community things, church dances, you name it. That's where they would do stuff, and that's basically the concept of the commons.
Okay. Now, you're not like totally dark when it comes to social media. I see you on Facebook. So how do you leverage like the social media world as you're building this very tactile community world?
Well, you just get people to come out. You
Okay.
just constantly keep pushing the idea that we're doing stuff as a community down at the Commons. I mean,
Okay.
Saturday we had a farmer's market, probably had a couple of thousand people out there. I ran into folks that I haven't seen in years just from being down at the market all day. This coming weekend, Thursday through Sunday, we're going to do a food and clothing and emergency goods and toy drive for the folks that were affected by the tornadoes last night in Middle Tennessee.
Okay.
That, once again, not only does it provide a place and a time for people to do something for others, but it also allows them to stop and talk and visit. And I just think the more talking we do, that's not necessarily not political, but not. I think it's just better for the overall health and well-being of the community.
Sure. Yeah, I'm thinking of a book that I was reading a while back when I was working on my studies for a dissertation, and I think it was by Gardner. And if I remember correctly, it was called Social Intelligence. Same guy that wrote the book Emotional Intelligence, and he talks about how there are things that we pick up from each other in exchange, that physiologically there's stuff going on in between that we pick up when we're in each other's space that I don't think we pick up with our devices moving back and forth. We can glean a vibe from somebody, intonation. We probably guard ourselves or kind of exercise a little more kind of interpersonal judiciousness of civility, of exchange when we're in person versus virtual. So I think this is kind of an interesting idea of a commons where there's actual face-to-face human connection.
Well, what I've found is that there are people on Facebook that if my only interaction with them was on Facebook, I would probably virtually hate them.
Yeah, right.
But when I have a meeting with them or, actual one-on-one time, they're some of the most delightful people on the planet.
Right.
But what the little metal plastic boxes have done is they've made everyone a critic. They've made everyone, it's like, look, my opinion's out there. Well, the opinion doesn't make you right.
Yeah.
And it's easier a lot of times, I've found, to have a differing opinion or to tell someone their facts just aren't straight one-on-one than it is to be trying to tell them on Facebook.
Right.
I mean, there's been several times when people have gotten on my page and just, I've said something and they've eviscerated me. Well, instead of nuking them back,
Right.
a lot of times I just pick up the phone and call them.
Right.
Like, hey, do you want to go to lunch?
Yeah, perfect.
And, by the time lunch is over with, you've had a good discussion about the topic and no one's mad at each other anymore.
That says an interesting thing about even like if we have friends virtually, if we don't have any way of connecting with them physically, maybe it's to what extent do we engage virtually?
Well, I think Facebook's given people the illusion of friendship. I mean, just because, I post something and there are 200 likes. Well, how many people actually read what I wrote? How many people just said, "Oh, Barto's posted again."
Sure.
Like,
yeah. I kind of like him, so
I'll just go along with it.
Sure. So, just these two ideas of connecting and aesthetic. If you think back in your growing up years or whatever, where did this value of aesthetic kind of crop up for you?
I think we traveled a lot when I was a kid. We did these month-long family vacations, oftentimes with a few elements from National Lampoons involved. Something goes wrong, we get lost, flat tires, cars break down, stuff like that. But I think it's just from being out. And while I love the Collegedale area, I love Ottawa and Georgetown where we live now, there are places that have done it better and done it right. And you can't... I had this discussion with one of the former commissioners at Collegedale, and he was just like, "Barto, Collegedale's the most beautiful place on earth, and it's wonderful." And I looked at it, I was like, "No, it's not. It's great, but it's not the best.
There's a lot.
We can do a lot better."
Places, yeah.
And I think people need a place that's attractive and pretty to congregate.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the Catholics figured it out a long time ago. Build big, beautiful, stunning churches.
Right.
And I think folks want to go to places like that. Look at the Tivoli downtown. It's beautiful. The big parks up in New York City. They're well done. They're aesthetically pleasing. I think people like that. I think they're more apt to come to a well-landscaped, well-maintained, beautiful architecture environment like the Commons than they are, say, there's a park up in Cleveland. Their farmer's market is a tin hut.
Sure.
Well, I mean, gravel lot, tin hut, that's fine. It's there. And they have a certain amount of business, but it's not turned into a place where people congregate.
Sure. And I've noticed, whether people are renting the Commons for a wedding or for a family reunion or for some kind of civic or religious event, that I think the more kind of traffic you get through an area, because it has a certain just kind of aesthetic draw to it, then it creates a whole kind of aura or mystique around the area over time, wouldn't you say?
Yes, and then that bounces actually back to social media.
Right.
Because the prettier it is, the more apt they are to then start posting and talking about it on social media. I mean, we borrowed this 9-foot Rock City gnome from the Bar Nursery week and a half ago. That gnome is popping up in more Facebook posts, more Instagram posts, more... I mean, it's like the Christmas trees and the concrete Little Debbies at the Little Debbie Park. They're everywhere.
What is meme worthy?
Yeah. And, a friend of mine, actually my board chair for the foundation, sent me his son's Christmas card picture, and it's him and his wife, 2 little kids, with the gnome out front of the Commons. I mean, I'm thinking at this point we ought to just buy the gnome and make it just part of the facility.
Yes. Wow. Well, my mind is thinking of all kinds of puns, but nothing's coming. It's not a misnomer; it is a true nomer. But yeah, that's fascinating. So, okay, and then tell me also about this idea of the backdrop of what drew you into making connections and building community. What was it about your developmental years and just over time growing up in this community? What I mean, it's a unique gift that you have, I think, and I'm curious to know how that.
I have no idea. I'm an introvert. In fact, I'm probably one of the most introverted people that you've ever met.
Okay.
I'm a trained, extroverted acting introvert. In other words, I've just had to self-teach. I'm very happy up here on this 220 acres, cutting wood, mowing, blowing leaves, listening to my audiobooks. I'm quite content up here.
But somehow you found your way into connecting.
Because someone's got to pick up the football. What I've seen with the Commons, with Foundation, with a lot of stuff in politics is a great comfort level of just mundane. Well, the ball's laying there. Just leave it. Okay. Well, it's not moving. We're not moving the game. And what I've done a lot is just pick up the ball and move it. It's, it's not always about even making the right decision. Just make a decision. Just move the game forward. And that's a lot of what I think, I don't know, if I was going to say I'm good at, it's just making a decision and getting things to move. I mean, it's just like this it's this food drive, clothing drive, toy drive for the folks in Clarksville. There's absolutely no real reason for Collegedale tomorrow to be involved with that.
Okay.
There was not a reason for us to get involved in as far as for what Collegedale tomorrow is.
Sure.
We're not a Samaritan Center. We don't feed the poor. We don't do that kind of stuff.
That's not your stated goal.
Yeah, that's not our stated goal, but we have a centrally located facility that's easy to get in and out of. We have a big barn with plenty of room. We have connections with various other organizations that can facilitate transportation, getting everything over to Clarksville and the other communities that were ripped to pieces in the tornadoes. So a lot of times it's just a matter of asking the question, why not? Well, why shouldn't Collegedale tomorrow do it? We have no reason not to. Wow. It's a good thing to do for people. And the other thing is it makes people... I've often thought of good deeds as, yes, you're helping somebody. You're doing a nice thing for somebody. But it also, I think, improves the person that's doing the deed. To a certain extent. So I think we give people more opportunities to maybe see their own better angels. If that makes sense.
Sure. So right now we've got in play aesthetic, connection, and service or benevolence. And I think I think what you're saying is so fascinating to think. Well, your organization or even your life calling may not be allegedly like I'm a service person or we're a service organization or, but how did you say it? You said, why not?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was the whole, that goes back into picking up football, etc. But the other thing is, ask the question, why not? Why can't Collegedale have excellent architectural standards? Why can't we have the Commons? Why? You just have to ask why not. And you have to keep asking it.
And when you get a no in whatever your endeavor, well, why? Why not?
Yeah, you just have to keep asking why not. And it's not why not to the point of you're an annoying nuisance. But the idea then is to listen to the person that's telling you no and figuring out, well, maybe we can't get from point A to point B. But when you're listening to them, you figure out a way real quick. There's a clear route to point C.
Mm-hmm.
And C may be actually better than A. I mean, better than B.
Yeah. I can't remember what I was reading, but it was talking about this idea that sometimes we get focused on option A or option B. If you can introduce just a third option, it can just totally change the game.
Well, the Commons doesn't look anything like we designed it 8 years ago. I mean, it was on almost 19 acres. It would have been about $45 million. It was stunning, but I was never going to get it built. Not in 1 year. So what we did was we retreated and then came up with a general idea that we would basically leapfrog to get to the final point, build several million now, wait a year and a half, build a couple million, then wait a year, just work our way forward.
Do it in stages.
And now with the Little Debbie parks thrown in, I think we're up to over 22 million. And if we do phase 4 at the Commons, then we'll probably be coming in about 30. It's still not a, quote, town center development, which is what we originally had in mind, but it's pretty, it's functional, and it works, and people love it.
Yeah, I remember a few years ago recording a CD, and I think like what I learned in the studio was you have the conception of what you think it's going to be, and then once you get into it, in the studio at least, you realize it doesn't necessarily have to be perfect. I mean, you can do another take, you can tweak, you can adapt, you can maneuver. And like you were saying earlier, just to pick up the football and begin to move. I mean, any great football game has that texture of nobody saw that play coming. Dwight Clark, as much as I'm a Cowboys fan, catching that ball on his fingertips in the back of the end zone, I think it was in 1987. Nobody forgets that moment. Now,
right.
Was that exactly the way the game was meant to go? I don't know. Probably not, but
yeah. It worked.
Yeah.
It got the field goal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and the other thing is, and it's starting to be utilized a little too much, but is saying that something about perfection perfection is the biggest enemy of, what is it, good? Or to me, it's perfection is the enemy of getting stuff done. And perfection, a lot of times, if everyone's striving for perfection, then all anyone's going to do is sit around, twiddle their thumbs, and worry about life.
Sure.
It's way easier to just go get a B+ and be done with it.
Yeah, I've heard it said perfection is the 200-pound shield we carry around trying to protect ourselves or protect our community or protect whatever. And that's
I mean, that's basically it. We're not going to get it perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, that goes into my overall philosophy on, good versus evil, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And it just sort of rolls into it. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Well, in what sense? That's intriguing to me.
Well, in that, especially online, you see people that, everything's got to be black and white.
Okay.
And I'm like, there's only one white. There's only one black in morality.
Sure.
You've got the Lord on one side, devil on the other. That's pretty clear.
Yeah.
The rest of us just live in a wonderful world of gray. Some people are darker gray. Some people are lighter gray.
Right.
But the rest of us just delve in the world of gray. And there's no one's perfect.
Sure.
So this idea that you see online a lot where everything's black and white, it's like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, various national issues.
Yeah.
It's not black and white. You say no to something and it's a blanket no, well, then you get into the whatabouts.
Yeah.
Well, that's the gray.
Sure.
And the world's got to be able to function in gray.
Yeah. Well, if all you had is black and white on a old time picture, you wouldn't see a whole lot. It was
all the gray.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's one of the, going back to online and our magic boxes in our pockets. that's something I've really seen as on both sides, everything is either I'm completely right and you're completely wrong, or it's black and white. And it's just like when you look at 99% of issues, there is no completely right answer. There is no Republican answer. There is no completely Democrat answer. In fact, most of the time, both of those answers are entirely wrong.
Yeah.
But if you take 40% of the Republican answer and 40% of the Democratic answer and merge it in the middle, all of a sudden you can make actual policy that'll work.
Sure. In the faith realm, my father used to say, well, if believing all the right stuff is what it takes to get to the afterlife, then at the most, only one of us is going to make it because no two of us see it exactly the same.
Well, my grandfather, who was worked at Southern, they moved into Collegedale, I think, in 1954. So he worked for Southern up until the late 80s when he retired at about age 70. He used to tell this joke, and I'll try to make it really quick. So truckload of folks, a van load of people die in a car wreck, and they all up in heaven. And St. Peter meets them at the gates in the heavenly tour van. And they're driving around heaven, and lots of happy people, and they drive over to this one area, and it's got a big bunch of huge Gothic buildings and beautiful everything. It's like, what part of heaven is this? It's Catholic heaven. Well, right next door, you have this little white-clad village and everything. And what part of heaven is this? Oh, this is Baptist heaven. Drive around a bend, and still within eyesight, and synagogues and all this. This is Jewish heaven, and they hit Muslim heaven. Right. And, well, then they started really driving. They went over the heavenly mountains, got on a boat, crossed the heavenly ocean, went over some more heavenly mountains, and came across this deep, deep valley, down surrounded by mountains. And down in the bottom, there's this beautiful little village. And there's no entrance signs. Just, you cannot go there. And everybody was like, well, what part of heaven's this? I was like, well, that's SDA heaven. But we fixed it to where they think they're the only ones up here.
Have mercy.
And, that's, my grandfather, who was a great Adventist, he ran the communion at the Collegedale Church. He was head deacon. My grandmother ran the deaconess sale, which is the precursor to the Samaritan Center. These people were saints. But even he didn't think that everything was completely right.
Yeah. He had a sense that we're
not the only ones that are going up the big stairway.
I suppose for all of us, whatever our background or religious conviction or lack thereof, realizing we're not the only ones might be a really good thing to come to.
Well, part of running the Commons and running the foundation has been that since I am basically about as neutral as you could get on the whole religious subject, I have a terrific what I call small C Catholic group of friends. So I've got Presbyterians and Episcopalians and Jewish folks and Islamists. I've met some Hindus, and I love them. Hindus are just charming folks.
And the food is awesome.
And the food is awesome, and they feed you. But, it has allowed me to see that there are just a lot of great people out there.
Yeah.
And some very, very religious, very, very Adventist-y friends of mine have moved over to Garden Plaza over at Greenbrier.
Sure.
The big three-story.
Yeah.
They go to the It Is Written deal twice a year.
Yeah.
These folks are. And I was actually afraid because they're in their 90s, and I was a little nervous that they would get over there and, oh no. He's running around with like this old Baptist preacher and a couple of Episcopalians and an atheist professor. Best darn things ever happened to these people. It got them out of their little bubble. And all of a sudden, they've discovered that other people are fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't say they've gone liberal, but
Yeah. Well,
they're much more liberal-minded than they say they were years ago when I was a kid.
I guess it's good sometimes that we burst our own bubble.
Yeah.
Well, so I think I want to pick up the football today
Okay.
in this sense. Typically, I pre-record these things and a few weeks goes by and then I release it. But you mentioned something specific that I think it'd be great for me to run home, post-produce this, which shouldn't take long, and then put it up there tonight, and you can put it out to your friends, and I can put it out through the Intersect page and my page, whatever. But give us a little more, and we're going to do a wrap here, but specific details. So you're saying that they're gathering goods at the Commons.
We're going to start Thursday at 8 a.m. and go till 8 or 9 p.m. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Okay, that's December. That's going to be December 14, 15, 16, 17, 2023.
Right.
Okay.
And we've our public works director, Eric Sines, is working with a group out of Cleveland that will come down, collect everything. Then they'll transport everything over to the areas. So we don't have to worry about transportation this time. 2 years ago, we brought in over 2 semi-truckloads of stuff.
Wow. Okay.
We need food. We need gifts for small children, preferably wrapped with a tag on them. We need clothing, jackets, tarps. I mean, you name it. I mean, imagine your house is gone. You've got little kids. We're at 2 weeks before Christmas.
Okay. And is there any site or somebody that they should reach out to?
We're going to have the barn, which is in between City Hall and the main commons.
Okay.
The barn with the big double doors.
Okay.
We're going to set everything up in the barn.
Okay.
So folks can come by, back up, drop off anything they've got.
All right. And that would start on Thursday at what time?
8 a.m.
8 a.m. Okay. So as a wrap, we've talked about aesthetic and connection and benevolence. What's the big takeaway today, Mr. Barto?
Oh, that's good. I have no idea what the takeaway is, but that may be the best takeaway. Think about it.
Yeah. So watch your world. Look for what's beautiful. Watch your relationships. Look for who you need to connect with that you might think's a jerk right now. And then just seek to do a kind thing, not even because it's necessarily in your mission statement, but just because.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, why not?
Okay. Well, with that, I want to thank you for joining us today at Intersect, and we hope that you have a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and you figure out a way to move the football.